I'll call the open board meeting of Tuesday. Excuse me, Mrs. Superintendent, I'd like to call the board meeting to order for Tuesday, April the 2nd, 2019. I squeal CM nat sietya, I nas kawalawan kawanas e lamnada. We respectfully acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people where we live, learn, and play. Before we get to the agenda, I would like to first welcome Robin Bray, our new superintendent. Thank you for being here with us. We're very excited to have you. And at the same time, I guess it is Rod Allen, or Steve. I wouldn't have said that. Our former superintendent. Time for us to say goodbye and to thank you. So when Rod came to the district, he made significant change. It was like a tornado. He blasted in here and got rid of all of the walls and the barriers and created no offices, just a big space. And so then the next thing was everyone was standing at their desks. We knew change was coming. Then he put back some offices and even some meeting rooms. So all went well. But it was a dramatic start, I felt. But elsewhere, he did much more significant change in our schools and with our community. He came as a provincial leader in curriculum transformation, and he has impacted our students, our staff, our parents, and the community with that vision. We suddenly had land-based learning. The community was in our schools, and we were out to the community. A nature school arose, student voice with staff, taking risks and creating personalized, engaged, new ways of learning. Another change for us was the international reputation that Rod brought us, as we hosted many international visitors who recognized the great work being done in our district by teachers and administrators with support staff. And of course there was the OECD involvement, which I'm sure will continue, and which included other staff in our district, which we really appreciated. I need to mention two significant themes you've impressed upon us. One is your reconciliation leadership. We have begun that process, and we will, which gives us better relationships with our First Nations communities, and we'll continue that work. The second thing is your recognition of the importance of student voice and agency. Again, you've led that change, and we will continue to follow your lead. Our district, our learners, our educators, our support staff, and the education system in BC are grateful for the years of devoted service that you've brought to education. Cowichan Valley has been very fortunate to have you as a part of your career, and we wish you all the best in your retirement. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Trustee Croft has collected something on behalf of our district. Oh, and we also have a card that goes with it.
There we
so,
go.
Trustee Croft, would you like to
Sure.
come hints and
Okay.
and deliver?
Okay. You have to pay for it by listening to my words, right? Congratulations on your retirement. I bet you're having a very poignant week with lots of well wishes and warm handshakes, maybe a few hugs. I just figured by now. And you know, it seemed to me that by now you're probably getting a little sick of all that sentiment and love and authenticity and stuff. So here are some balancing remarks. And I say this because I care. So, your retirement. What a bittersweet moment. And not just because it's the Rod is retiring, try to look sad thing. It is truly lovely to see you transition to retirement. And we hope it is all you want it to be, but it will have just enough surprises to keep it interesting. Of course, there could never be enough time to list all the benefits you've brought to our valley. Candace did an awesome job. No, that's probably right. No, there's not enough time. Okay, so we'll keep going. I see your contribution as a trail pebbled with let me try this again. I see your contribution as a trail pebbled with disruption and topped with sprigs of irony. Irony, because yes, learning can be hard work, but when you make it joyful, kids don't feel like they're working hard. Disruption doesn't have to be about breaking down. In fact, in its proper creation, in its proper form, disruption is creation. Education doesn't really have to be about academic excellence. It does have to be about equity. Equity is the win that gets our kids to the people they will become and gets our society and makes it a civil society. You too. Thank you. To get it right, change can be ponderous. But when things get serious, and you showed me this great ship can turn on a dime and do what's right. You're smarter than me, and yes, I do like to think that that's saying something.
Really?
Okay. I was going to put you in there as well. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't know. I'm grateful to learn about trusteeing from you, what it is, and many times what it isn't, and I've tried to take your good advice. You showed me that we are not necessarily in the education business, or even in the people business. Rather, we are in a values business. Get your values in order, Rod said, and the system will follow. And I think we are living proof. Thank you. You laugh at all my jokes, and the importance of which should never be minimized. I hope you have brief Robin of us. Rod, you are accomplished in so many things. These few points barely scratch the surface of your grand intellect and good heart. No joke. Rod and I are the same age, and we were born within a week of each other, although we didn't know that at the time. I'm a smidge jealous that you are ahead of me and off to the nirvana of retirement. So I'd really appreciate it if you take notes. Surely you can fit a few notes in between bike rides, barbecues, between woodworking, and between sharing the message of educational transformation with the world. Thank you for so many things. We're very glad to have been part of your journey.
Oh my goodness. Okay, adoption of the agenda. Moved by trustee Hutchins, seconded by trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Oh, pardon me, we are not going there quite yet. I'm sorry, we have some additions to the agenda. So first is 9.B, which is BEBC motion on advisory committee terms of reference. 11A, which is letter from the District Health and Safety Committee. And 8.31 will change to 2019-20 capital plan response letter, and the items below will move to 8.3.2 and 8.3.3. Okay, we have a partial motion on the floor. Now it is amended. All those in favor, motion carries. Moving to minutes of the February 27th, 2019 special open board meeting and adoption of the minutes. Motion, please. Moved by trustee Croft, seconded by trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to minutes of the March 5th, 2019 open board meeting. Moved by trustee DeGroot, seconded by trustee Kemmler. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to recognition and delegation. And the first is a student from Shemina Secondary, Morgan Bottomley. Oh, and I've just been handed a picture of the two people that are going to be recognized, Morgan Bottomley and Hannah Pachette, who are two amazing Shemina Secondary students who were recently in Ottawa with Alistair McGregor, our Member of Parliament for Cowichan, Malahattan and Langford. Both Morgan and Hannah, that's this man, just a second. Both Morgan and Hannah were guests of Mr. McGregor after they had successfully pitched their idea to create a tax credit for organic farmers in a Create Your Canada contest sponsored by the MP. This big pitch had become a private member's bill and was tabled in Parliament with both Morgan and Hannah present to watch the proceedings. Morgan is with us today on behalf of the two girls to be recognized for their incredible contribution and drive to develop this bill. And we have a little something for both of you here. Congratulations, it's just absolutely wonderful. And you take Hannah's as well?
Okay, I will.
Thank you. That's an amazing accomplishment. Morgan, would you like to talk a wee bit about your experience?
Should I do sit here or?
You can stand.
Yeah.
If you sit down the
Yeah.
table, everyone will see you.
Okay. Well, it all started when our geography teacher, Miss Janet Ruay, came forward to us and begged us to do this contest because she had a lot of hope in us that we might be able to win the contest. And on the note of retirement, she was retiring that year as well, and she wanted to kind of go out with a bang too. So we ended up winning, and she was really proud of us. And she, on the topic of geography and everything, that's how we came up with the tax credit for organic farming, because we knew that on the market, organic farming is a lot lower than commercial farming, and we were learning about GMOs at the time as well. We were learning about a lot of case studies in Canada as well. And so Alistair McGregor is also on the Agricultural Committee of Canada and all that and stuff. So I think that kind of piqued his interest as well. So when we were there, we also attended a agricultural meeting, and it's kind of like the meeting that we're having now, where they passed motions and stuff like that. They were talking about how to approach the public and approach Canadian dairy farmers on how to be more amiable with each other, and how the provinces might take on different roles with agriculture as well. We made it in time to see our bill being talked in the House of Commons, and when we tried clapping, we were told not to clap. So, yeah. And then the same night, we also got to see the Senate, and it was beautiful because they had just redone, and it was wonderful to see. And they also allowed us into the House of Commons that night when no one was in it, and that's where some of the pictures you probably saw online or in the news article, where we're sitting in Justin Trudeau's chair or DeGrooter's chair as well. That's where those came from. So yeah, it was very cold, a lot colder than here actually. It was very short. We kind of absorbed a lot of politics within the 48 hours that we were there. So we went back to our hotel that same night and we were watching the news and trying to like absorb all of it. It was a lot to take in, but it was a wonderful experience. And I hope like many students in the future have the same opportunity that we did, because it was an eye-opener to see what the background is like for a politician in Canada.
Wow. Well, thank you. That was a great background. Okay, moving to item 5, report of closed meeting. Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you. At 3:30 today, we held the closed meeting of the board. There were multiple personnel issues and a facility issue.
Thank you. Moving to item 6, old business A, action list on page 18. Just take a moment to look through the items. You'll notice on the meeting with local governments, just a reminder that our meeting with the municipality of North Cowichan is on April 29th. And it's here in the boardroom. Anything further, staff, that you wish to?
The childcare spaces funding applications we've talked about, and we hope that those will continue along.
Thank you. Anything?
Shemana Secondary School, we met with the North Zone admin team, as well as district staff, and are fairly well along in developing a plan to address these items.
Thank you.
I'll just keep rolling if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
March 5th, we have gathered information from each of the schools on the sexual health education delivery models that they are using. And that report will be moved. It's currently sort of in table form and will be turned into more of a report format and be available to you next month.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the letters to the local governments regarding the cannabis vaping retailers have been sent. So that's done. And the vaping item there has attracted a lot of media attention, which is kind of interesting. We've also written a letter to Island Health and our couch, and Claire is trying to coordinate a meeting. So at that point, once the meeting date is decided, it will come to all trustees, and people who are interested hopefully will be able to attend.
Legacy Wall,
Yes.
After some conversations and consultation with amongst senior staff, we believe that the sort of space right outside that wall where there's currently a bulletin board would be the appropriate location to begin that process.
Great.
So leave bulletin boards down, paint up, and then work to figure out where we put it sort of nice and visible in the foyer outside the boardroom.
Yeah, thank you. Any further questions on the action list? Okay, moving to Superintendent of Schools. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to talk about my growth plan. I think you covered it nicely, so
Nice trip.
be done with that. It was a challenge to report on a growth plan because I think it's not organized in a way that I would do that now. However, I've sort of gathered some themes and tried to blend them into a bit of a report. Start with the piece that I'm not sure I've done a particularly tremendous job on, and that is improving communications with the district and the trustees. The action point of this was to work with Leroy Sloan's model, and I'm not sure we actually implemented some of those ideas that he had around communications. So focus on communications has been through our communications manager. increased use of Facebook, social media, and really trying to beef up our presence there, as well as continuing to report to trustees at board meetings on personnel items. Keep trustees up to speed there, so that they're in the loop, or by email as should things be a little bit more emergent. However, I think that's something that I would pass on to your new superintendent as something that needs to be continually developed. Goal 2 was around looking at continuing to build relationships between the district and outside agencies and partners to help other organizations in the valley and around the province to feel part of the transformation and learning efforts of this district. So I think things like, and what's weird here is I'm commenting on a lot of the work that other people did, not me. Because that's how it works. It's not about taking credit for that work, but I think the role of leadership is to enable and encourage and create the conditions where those kinds of things happen and flourish more readily. So many people in this room will recognize their work being talked about here, and it's not, like I say, it's not ever to take credit for it, but to highlight the amazing work that folks in this room and around in this district have done. So, for example, the work that's gone on in this valley in the last few years to focus on New Cowichan Secondary School has been a community effort, and the community has embraced that work as a community event, a community effort, not just, oh, we'll help the school district with that. It's become a thing that people are committed to across this district. I think the opening of Nourish Cowichan last Friday, or the Friday before, that a number of trustees participated in. Again, an opportunity for the district to fully participate in community efforts, in supporting things like Nourish Cowichan and the work that they and Rotary Club do. The work that's happening in partnership with VIU on all the dual credit work, and apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship work that's happening, those are, as Trustee Thorne knows, those are true community collective efforts to find, we might develop the young people, but the community has to embrace them and has to embrace those partnerships, embrace pre-apprenticeship opportunities and those kinds of things. That's done collectively throughout our district, throughout our valley, and the insane growth of those opportunities for our young people. It's something I think we can all be proud of. Vancouver Island Learning Network has allowed our tech folks to showcase some of the great work that's happening in this district, and support and enable other districts across Vancouver Island in the development of that work, and shows the district taking a leadership role. And it reflects so positively on this school district and the work that happens in the school district, and it's a model that's being looked at, as we've talked about before, in the Lower Mainland as well as actually in the Maritimes through Apple Canada. So it's a model that I think this district should be very proud of. Talked a little bit about dual credit. The work that we, and I'll talk maybe about one program in particular at this point, and that is the EA and Community Worker Dual Credit Program, which supports our district's needs around creating education assistance, but also a number of community organizations in terms of the community support workers that are trained through our initiative and with our support that impact agencies and organizations across the valley. That shows good community partnership on the behalf of this district, as well as other agencies looking at us going, hey, they're looking out for us too. It's not just about the school district, they're looking out for us. I think relationships with Chief Seymour and Cowichan tribes in particular, Malahat Nation, to name a couple. Chief Seymour has been an excellent partner and has worked hard with the school district to develop a collective vision of where this valley can go in terms of education and in terms of our young people. The example I'd use is an unfortunate one, but when the fight was videotaped, Chief Seymour, and we were having coffee within half an hour of that, and along with one of the mayors, and quickly determined it was a community effort that was needed. This was a community issue. It played out in one of our schools, but it was a community issue, and community came to bat, and we worked collectively to work through that. I think that's a relationship piece where we really view how we're doing this. Sure, outside agencies and partners are aware of and feel part of the transformation. Again, that's a lot of the dual credit work that happens. I'd also mention the master's program at VIU is now moving and starting a Masters of Education Leadership program here in the Cowichan Valley, because they're viewing this as a bit of a hotbed of leadership, and are opening up a program in the fall, and are anxious to make this a destination program because they like the partnerships that they see here in the valley and the way that leadership is viewed in the valley. And so VIU, great partners. CEOs we have here, and we do, the CEOs across this valley meet quarterly, sometimes more regularly, but we all get together quarterly. Robin has been invited to the next one. The choice of some restaurants is questionable when left up to the Ladysmith people, but I'm sure you'll rectify that, Robin, to a better class of restaurant. And it's a great conversation, and it certainly highlights something that Chair Spilsbury has been working towards, and really highlighting that the school district is an active member of municipal government level kinds of things, and some good initiatives have come out of those conversations sort of at the CEO, CAO level. And guess what? I left the learning to last. And the growth plan, it's continue to pursue system transformation to better support the learning of our students. Candace Spilsbury talked about this, as did Trustee Croft, and thank you for those kind words. Equity, 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 equity. We can't have any conversations about learning without embracing and understanding equity and inequity, the two sides of the same coin. And I think we've got over trying to hide the inequities, and we just need to put them on the table and figure out ways around them now. And so I think that's a great place that this district is at. The schools that are now presenting at BEBC are talking about equity. They are talking about the change models. They're talking about the frameworks that they are using and that we're using across the district to understand how change and organizational shift happens, and the kinds of models that are being represented there. International provincial networks, Chair Spilsbury, you mentioned many of those, but we've had some cool folks spend time with us here in the district, and those, I think, matter. Yang Zhao, David Albury, John Abbott, Amelia from Harvard, and Gelp continues to be here. The OECD work, we continue to see that having great effect here. Our students at DSAC continue to talk about their time with Yang. So when Yang came to the district, who's the first group he spent half a day with? Was the students. I think that mattered to Yang, and it mattered to the kids. The kids still talk about that as a pivotal moment for some of their leadership ideas about agency. Yang challenged all of us around student agency. David Albury continues to be, we now use him as a verb. We Alburyize things in this district. We use his frameworks constantly as ways of and models of thinking about our work. John Abbott, when he came and met with the board, I think had some conversations with us again. Makes us think hard about the role of young people and making sure that we have high enough expectations of our young people. And we challenge us and say we don't actually. We need to have higher expectations. And guess what? Kids always rise to those expectations as long as we keep them high. The OECD work I've been privileged to engage in has played out in this district, as has this district played out in the OECD work. The Learning 2030 framework that will come out next month in May in Vancouver that will be unveiled in May. If you read the whole whopping thing, you will find a bunch of collagen in there. It's kind of cool. Harvard work has been, continues and has been, I think, affected, certainly through our principals and vice principals and senior staff, lots of the conversations that we have here in the district as we think about those frameworks, think about ways to think about leading change and transformation. And that whole Harvard project came out of a conversation that started in this district. That whole North American initiative came out of conversations that began in this district. We are hosting the next Harvard meeting here. They haven't tried that before. This is the first time they're trying to have a place-based learning conversation. And their purpose in coming at the end of the month is to interrogate us and our work and see if the kinds of things that we think we're accomplishing here, and those are many nascent and growing things, but are we sort of on the right track? Are we, I think somebody referred to me as a disruptor. Are we using disruption in the appropriate way? Disruption is a very good tool. Are we using that in appropriate ways, and so on? So pretty cool work with Harvard, and that will continue after me, and we'll hand that off to Robin. Learning Forward has been a part of the journey in this district. I've been privileged to be part of Learning Forward. I've never actually joined the organization, but they keep inviting me back. And they haven't got a fee out of me yet, so you're welcome. Has been to the point where through work in this district and some interactions with several folks, some of whom are in this room, they created an innovation strategy. Learning Forward is a large North American-wide professional learning organization. And this district was the only Canadian team that was supported through a learning initiative with a team made up of teachers and administrators from Cowichan Secondary and Coheman. Pretty nifty. The ministry, it's been great to have the ministry network, and so I would say the ministry now views this district with a different set of lenses than they did a while ago. We're seen positively when they have questions. We're one of the first places they come, whether it's to Jason for questions, Cheryl for questions, Tom on mental health, Cheryl on curriculum, and a variety of things. We're seen as a district that contributes to the provincial conversation, and that's a way better place to be than one that doesn't. And I think that plays out in things like mental health money being brought here by the ministry in excess of any other district, because they know we will steward that well and work with them, and Cheryl and Tom and Tim working, and Denise with a group of educators here and helping to create resources on behalf of the ministry. That's great professional learning for us, as well as contributing to the provincial work. We may just see Peter Senge here for a little bit to come and check us out through some ministry connections. And I think New Cal High, I think we're on their radar in some ways that we weren't previously. Are we a district that's worth investing in? I think the answer now is yes, and that's awesome. Skills, trades, and apprenticeships, and vulnerable students, rethinking how we approach vulnerability, and that comes through that equity lens. And equity isn't just a way of, this is going to sound a tad preachy, I apologize, isn't just a way of making sure that everybody reaches a certain bar, but it's making sure that a whole variety of measures of success are given equal weight and attention, and understanding there's a variety of pathways to success for a variety of our young people. And the work that's happened here, skills, trades, apprenticeships, so many of those personal stories when you talk to those young people start with, I hated school and school hated me. And now I feel very differently about that. I have a career. I see a positive, optimistic future. As Scott talked about when they were here with Seabulk, I don't know how you measure some of those stories, but I think you gather them and collect them and embrace those stories of young folks whose lives have been altered by how our schools are doing business, what we consider success, and how we embrace the whole community in working through that. Well, that went on a long time. So I'll end, because you started with thanks. Just want to thank the board for the opportunity to spend 4 years here. It was a wild ride. It was a ton of fun. And I appreciate the board's tolerance of me and some craziness that I brought to the table, and the disruption that was caused from time to time, hopefully for mostly good reasons. Oh yeah, I didn't even talk about Mill Bay Nature School. In terms of a disruptive force, I think as a district taking on a disruption the size of Mill Bay, which challenges many of our preconceptions about what we think about schools and how we think about how things operate, it has been embraced beautifully here in the district, and it will make us stronger and better. It doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Staff in schools, want to thank them. They, from the get-go, have been embracing of let's think about things differently. Let's be prepared to think a little bit differently about some things, and have had energy and passion for the work. And that's where the work happens. It doesn't happen here at the district level. It happens in our schools and classrooms. That's where the rubber hits the road. I shouldn't say anything nice about Eric and Chris, but I will. Just thank you. They have been great partners in this journey, and their wisdom and guidance and has been noticed, and thank you. And Erica can sometimes keep a straight face, not often. And I've learned more about dogs than I ever knew. Thank you, Chris. It's been a wonderful partnership, and we've challenged each other from time to time, and we haven't always agreed, but that's good. I think that tension has been positive. Principals and vice principals, I'm going to look at you. Remarkable group. We'll chat more tomorrow, but in terms of the dynamic energy they bring to the work and the leadership that they show, and in some tough and challenging conditions. District staff, Jason, Monroe, Denise, Cheryl, Tom, Mike, everybody at district staff. I'll say nice things about Tracy, to Tracy. It has been a collective endeavor. It hasn't been a group of individuals. I think we're a pretty high-functioning team, so Rob, you will be inheriting a team that puts the best interest of kids at heart, even if that's on a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday night, or whenever those conversations and meetings happen. It's kids first, and I think that's pretty cool. So like I said, my growth plan's not really about me, it's about everybody else, because they do all the work, and that's a thing of beauty. So thanks to everyone, and thanks for your tolerance, Tolson.
Thank you. It sounds like growth. You planned and we grew. That's great.
We did, and if you later on emergence theory, you can't always plan how those things go, but you know that if you start certain things in motion, things happen. And good people do good work, and great people do great work, and we have some great folks here that do great work.
I think
And you
we'd
should be
agree.
proud of them.
We'd agree. We have good folks and they do great work.
But enough about me. Sorry, there's more. Superintendent's update. Just a couple of things. Nurse Couch and official opening. It's a thing of beauty for the trustees who were able to be there. It was spectacular. That is such a legacy that you guys have created for this community and for the kids. Beautiful. Shelley Moore was here again yesterday. Shelley will be back end of the month. May 2nd, almost the end of the month, beginning of next month, for her third visit this year. And Shelley is a force of nature, And we are hoping to get some time with Shelley, with the board, and also out into the parent community and having the conversations. Her time is in such demand in this province, it is a bit of a wild ride. But Shelley and I have a couple of plans together, so I think that will be some fun days for Shelley and I. April 8th, non-instructional day. The morning will be at Samana, at the Big House. All staff is invited. The trustees are certainly invited to attend that. I'm not sure what else we'll sort out with Trustee Thorne and community, if there's something else going on the 9th. And that is done in partnership with Couch and Tribes. They have Shar and her team, and they've been great, and Mary Peter in her new role hit the ground running, and Mary organized the morning, storytelling, a variety of opportunities to partake in language and cultural activities and so on at the Big House in the morning. That is my first day not at work, but I'll come to work for the first half an hour or so to take the opportunity to introduce Robin to the district at large. And then I'll put my shorts on and run out the back door, and not that I want pants on. just for the record. And that'll be great. The afternoon of April 8th, staffs are meeting back in their schools, or if they don't want to travel, if they're from away, they'll meet here to focus on school planning, the next round of the school planning conversation. Already talked about the Deeper Learning Dozen convening. That's the Harvard group. Will be here April 30th, May 1st and 2nd. We'll be meeting at Providence Farms. Large interaction with the Indigenous community, as well as with some of our schools. We know we'll be going to Mill Bay Nature School. We're also hoping to do some very focused school tours to be determined. And anytime our educators get a chance to interact with a pile of smart folks, it's a good thing. And the smart folks get to interact with our folks who are even smarter than them. So it's going to be awesome opportunity. And we'll see what Harvard makes of that. Immunizations, onto some more prosaic kinds of things. As you know, there's been a lot of conversation in the province around measles and immunization and planning for next year. The ministry has, over spring break, sent out a communique that laid out 2 phases of this work. The first phase is them gathering information. So we have provided them with authorization to look into our online data files. It's met the test of privacy to start to link up public health records. And so we'll sort of understand the state of affairs. They will communicate directly, not through the school district, but directly with families that they want to check on the immunization status. And we'll do that without us. And then the second phase will launch in September, a mandatory registry of vaccinations. We don't yet know what that looks like or what that means. And I'm not sure the ministry does yet either, but they're working through that to better understand the immunization records that our students have. So we're into phase 1 with the ministry, and like all districts across the province, we partnered with them on sharing of records, and then phase 2 will roll out in or before September. And we'll see how that plays out. I know there'll be a ton more information coming, and it will be coming to board chairs. They're saying the first week of April. That is coming to an end. We haven't had the meeting notification yet, but it will be imminent, I assume. Thank you.
Moving to board action and
Yes,
courses.
we have 3 BAA courses for board action, 2 BAA courses for board action, Yoga 10 and 12. Before you comment on the absence of Yoga 11, you've already approved that a while back, but now we're expanding that into Yoga 10 and Yoga 12. We are here for your approval.
Motion to approve, trustee Hutchins and trustee DeGroot. Any conversation on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to item 8, Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Sullivan, please.
Did it? We have moved 8.21 further down on the agenda to now 8.31, and the reason for that is today we received an updated capital plan response letter that will allow us to take action on a bylaw for funding of those projects. So I'll get to that when we get down to 8.31. So that I'll start with the new 8.21, which is the 2019-2020 funding announcement. We can skip the first two items and go to the third one. The first two are really just the ministry's documents behind the funding announcement. They're included in your package, so you have them in your record as to what the grant looks like, as well as the various grants to date, such as the annual facility grant amount and community link grant amount, the amount of funding we're getting for employee health tax. The board has seen this slide that's up here before. This relates to a presentation that we made at the Board Education and Business Committee. But the point here is to show the change in our per pupil rates over the last 3 years. And in the right-hand side is where we have the 2019-2020 and a couple areas that we just really wanted to highlight for the public and for the board again, is a shift in the way the funding is distributed to school districts. So what you see there is significant increases in level 1, level 2, and level 3. Those are funding for students with designations. So for a level 1 student, that increase is 9.28% or $3,600, and then 4% and 4.59%. So that's a significant shift. As is funding, which is directed towards English language learners, up by 5.28%, and funding for Aboriginal education is 17.89%, which is about $300,000+. Very significant. But it doesn't come completely as new money. It actually comes out of the per pupil rate for the standard learners. So as you look up above where you see a change of $45, where previous years were $122 and $83, we get a change of 0.61%. That doesn't cover all of the wage increases which are coming into the district this May. So this May coming. Teachers and support staff will receive 1.75%, which is only 0.2 in this year, but entirely in next year, as well as the introduction of a lower instructional minutes or contact time in elementary from 1390 to 1380. So where that money is coming in is it's coming in those other factors. It's not missing from the grant, but it's showing up in those level 1, level 2, level 3 English language learner, Aboriginal education factors. So it appears like new money, but it's all. It's not necessarily that we're getting all new money in the area of special ed, because it's actually part of that funds are to pay for all those other wage increases. About a third has landed in the standard rate, and the other 2/3 are in the other rate. So the money that is required to pay for those wage increases. So wanted to show you that again. And if you could scroll this slide up a bit more. We went through this as well. So what this does, it means is that the board, based on an increased enrollment of almost 73 students, sees an increase in the regular funding of $901,000. In the areas of our unique student needs, you see that we're down a little bit on our level 1, fewer students predicted for next year. The left column being what we're estimating for next year, and the center column being what has been announced so far this year. You see level 2 special needs going up substantially. We have a hit count of 15, but the dollar amount is $604,000. So that's sort of that money showing up there. Level 3 special needs showing up at $108,000, and then AB Ed at $325,000. So another area where we're picking up is in unique geographic factors. So there's some small community supplements that are increased in there. So money is showing up in that area of the funding formula. And at the end of it all, when we scroll to the bottom, we are expecting a grant increase of $2,168,641. So before we get too excited about that figure, I want to now take you to the next document, which is a snapshot reconciliation of where we believe we are as we're starting our budget process. So rolling everything forward and building in the board's must-dos, such as recognizing those wage increases, the employer health tax, paying another half a year of medical services premiums, building in all of those things. So what we see here as we built our first budget is there's that 2.16641 coming in as our top line. That's our increased funding. Under other provincial grants, that's a net figure, which really is up because we're getting funding for the employer health tax. We're getting a reimbursement of a portion of the funding we're paying now as a 1.95% payroll tax to offset the future costs of medical services plan premiums. That's good. Tuition, we have made some adjustments as we had some programs in place last year with the dual credit that aren't committed yet, so we're taking those out at the start. That would be for the education assistant cohort and the hairdressing cohort. Other was some minor items that we would build in over the year as we know them. If we sell an asset or equipment, or we have a particularly good rental or some arrangement, we tend to pop up that budget. But the key here is that this year's budget was balanced on $2,458,760, which really means that our net revenues are up by about $66,000 because we haven't brought in any surplus yet. There will be surplus. So there will be surplus to bring in. Right now, we're not projecting it to be $2.5 million worth of surplus to be brought in from this current year. So the board at the BEBC meeting, the last meeting, saw that we were on track for about another $1 million, but there were some things that we were still expecting that were likely going to bring that up to about 1.3 in additional surplus from this year. So some of our expenditures, cost pressures that we want to make you aware of are teacher wage increments. We have a large percentage of our staff who have not reached the maximum of our teaching staff that have not reached the maximum step of their band. So they will move up with as their experience does through the pay scale. And about a third of our teachers, I think, are in that place of moving up through that pay scale. And that has a cost associated because they cost more next year than they did this year. So that has been built into the budget. Teacher and support staff wage increases, I talked about the money that's required to pay for those increases that are coming this coming May. That does not include anything that's going to be bargained. So the ministry has instructed us to leave that out because they'll fund any bargained increases later on. We're funding here the increases that were bargained in the previous round that were only in for 0.2 of the year because they arrive in May. You've got to pay for the whole year of them next year. Elementary instructional minutes comes out to about 1.73, 1.75 FTE required for that 1,390 dropping to 1,380 minutes of contact time. So we have to increase the increase the amount of non-contact time for those teachers, and that was bargained in the last round of collective agreement. Increased enrollment. So if we're going up by 73 students and we think we have a class size of around 1 to 24, we should expect to have 3 additional teachers in the operating budget. Same for our EAs. So we've looked at the enrollment increase in EAs, and we would expect to have, I can't remember exactly what that translates to, it's 17 over 3 times the rate, so I guess that's just over 6 FTE. If we think of a ratio of approximately 3 to 1 for an education assistant to student, that's just sort of an approximate ratio. One of the issues we have in this budget, and again, it's not a negative issue, is that we are now replacing so much more earlier for an absence with an education assistant, or with more reliability for an absence of an education assistant. So for years we haven't been able to replace those individuals. Certainly ran into challenges in the last couple of years with the numbers of new hires that we had, and people coming off our casual list and then not having available casuals. This particular year we're projecting that we're going to be close to $400,000 all over on those 2 budgets. We'll see how that changes, and that's mainly related to partially from an increased usage, but the big part is that it's just the ability to replace an EA on day 1 versus not having anybody. There's a cost associated with that, but it's a good problem, but it's a good cost to have. Pension rate reduction, some savings that were a result of our pension rate that dropped last year for the employer's contribution for teacher and municipal rates. It carries now into the entire year. We have a pressure for the ABED target. I showed you that we received another 325, but we already had a little bit over the target there. Portable moves. We're expecting to move 2 portables off of the Chemainus Elementary site. We're still working out where they're going to land, but that'll be up the cost. So that's certainly less expensive than buying 2 new buildings, but it took about $40,000 to move and reinstall a portable. We don't pay for the election next year. That's off the budget. So we're just sort of showing you some of the highlights here. Long-term planning for the consultants. So the board did the north zone. So we've left half of the budget that was allotted this year to continue that work in the central and south zones. And there's so many miscellaneous adjustments that it's hard to keep a running total of all the little lines that we go, that was a one-timer, this was in, that was out, but they resulted in another savings of about $313,000. So what that shows us is net cost pressures of around 1.989, almost $2 million, and then a net shortfall to start the budget process. Again, not bringing in any surplus, and we've talked about that being probably around 1.3 million over and above the 1% contingency. We have a shortfall here of about 1.9 million starting. So the big thing is going back to that surplus used to balance the 2018-2019 year. We used $2.5 million because we had to buy portables and a whole number of other items that came up during the year. Well, that money is not necessarily available for next year. So we start off with a bit of a challenge, not an insurmountable challenge, and this is the first snapshot of that for the board to understand sort of where our starting position is. So I'm open to any questions, or if that's clear enough, that's where we're beginning this process.
Any questions from trustees?
Thank you. Just referencing my agenda here. So the next item that I'm going to bring us back to, and you should have it on your desktops, is a new 8.31. And it's the new capital response letter. If we bring it up before we get to the reading, I'd appreciate it as we walk through the project. So the one that you have in your agenda package is missing a pretty key addition for us. The initial grant announcement did not include any bus replacements. So the ministry have taken established some different criteria on how you qualify for a new school bus. So it's around years of use and around the mileage, and it used to be one or the other. Now I believe it's both combined. So we would normally expect to receive 2 or 3 school buses in a year, and this year we did not receive any school buses, so because we hadn't met these new criteria. But the unfortunate part is that we keep our old buses as our spare fleet, and one of our spare fleet has to be retired. It simply isn't going to be recertified again for next year, which left us in a bit of a bind as to how we were going to move forward. Unfortunately, the ministry have heard that we had to retire one of those buses. Our transportation supervisor and director of operations made contact with the ministry, and they've come forward with the new capital plan announcement, which now includes a new school bus. 1 school bus. So we will have a couple of buses that we would normally have retired that will remain in our fleet. So we're going to need to consider in the budget what that means from a maintenance perspective. So if as your car gets old, over 400,000 kilometers, it's going to cost more than one that's brand new off the lot for your first few years. So we're going to need to be thinking about that as we build the budget, that we are going to have a couple of older buses and I did explain that this year we had a couple of turbos blow on 2 of our buses, and that really threw us over in our transportation budget. So just walking through the projects here, if you could just scroll it down. This is good news for the district. As a lot of these projects were planned out of our annual facilities grant. We can keep going. Now we have some money to do some other things. So I don't know why the ministry has phase 2 and phase 3 for building enclosure roof upgrades, but it's all really the same thing. There's 1.15 million here for roofing projects at Lake Cowichan Secondary, Drinkwater Elementary, Chemainus Secondary, Discovery Elementary, Duncan Elementary, Francis Kelsey Secondary, and Tanzer Elementary. So we're going to have a pretty significant roofing replacement project this summer. Typically that's when that work happens. Under mechanical upgrades, we see a boiler replacement at Nicole Mount Prevost, as well as mechanical upgrades for heat pumps at Coheman Elementary. So, and then the final one here, sorry, the second to the last one, really good news. We had a playground qualify for replacement at Alexander Elementary, so certainly a school that we know really needs a new playground. It's an older wooden structure. They are aware of this because it was a public announcement, so Alexander are already beginning to think about what that playground might look like. It's certainly, we have a very, very different playground at Mill Bay, so I'm interested to see how they kind of balance the old model, what a playground looks like, and the new model. But it's an accessible playground. You can apply for a non-accessible playground. I don't know why any district would do that. It should just be accessible playgrounds for all of the applications. And then we add in here the final piece, the school bus that was added. So that's why we've added this to the agenda last minute, is that we're now in a position to adopt the bylaw, which gives the ministry the authority to provide the funding for these projects. So we included that in your package, a copy of the bylaw, and as well, there's 4 motions for board action, and they are the adoption of that bylaw, so 2 readings before a reading to waive the requirement to have a 3rd reading and a 2nd meeting, and then a 3rd meeting are before you under the new 8.3.1.
Okay, any questions of the Secretary Treasurer? Any information? Then we move to the motions then. First motion gives first reading. Moved by Trustee DeGroot, seconded by Trustee Croft. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to the 2nd reading. Moved by Trustee Dolman, seconded by Trustee Kemmler. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to the 3rd motion, which is to consider 3 readings at this meeting. Moved by Trustee Thorne, seconded by Trustee DeGroot. All those in favor? Motion carries. And moving to the 3rd and final reading of the capital bylaw. Moved by Trustee Dolman, seconded by Trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
The next item under board action is a cannabis rezoning application request off of Drinkwater Road. And if we could bring up the map, I think that's probably the most important part slide to show you here. So this is a provincial cannabis store application that North Cowichan have received. Part of North Cowichan's new bylaw is to consult with the school district for any application that is 600 meters or within 600 meters of a school. You can see where it is highlighted there. If for on the map that might be difficult to know, this is Cowichan Commons. You can see the Canadian Tire store. That is between the subway and the Triple O's. So that is an application for a provincial store. Now, the reason it is here, as partly the reason why it's here, is that that property line of that entire site is 600 meters, within 600 meters of Drinkwater Elementary, although the actual store is not.
Trustee Croft?
What about Sonos?
Mr. Sanquist?
It would be more than 600 meters from
Think so?
Solomon's.
Okay.
Yeah, I think quite a bit more.
Okay.
So they are asking for feedback. The last application was in Chemainus, and on page 10 of our agenda packages is our minutes where we had a motion where the board said, because the board has no concerns, the board said that the Board of Education of School District number 79, Cowichan Valley, advises the municipality of North Cowichan that it has no comment on the rezoning application for, which would be 2980 Drinkwater Road, as it is in excess of 600 meters from the nearest school.
Can I just question, that's not within, it's not more than 600 meters,
You leave the last
correct?
bit off.
Sorry, say
You
again?
just leave the last bit of
The
that
building
was
is
Yeah,
not.
so leave the last piece of that motion off. Okay. Trustee Hutchins?
So moved.
Moved by Trustee Hutchins, seconded by Trustee Thorne. Any conversation on the motion? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. And moving to the final one, Secretary Treasurer.
The final business is to is operational. It's to take away some signing powers from our current superintendent and assign them to our new superintendent. So
It happened so fast.
What was his name again? She's not even out the door when we're doing that.
It's a requirement of our banking and the board's policy states that the assigning authorities reside with the board, one of the board chair or vice chair, and one of the superintendent or secretary treasurer. So it's to keep the combinations structured that way. So we have a motion here which would provide for that transfer effective on Saturday, April the 6th.
Thank you. Is moved by Trustee Hutchins, seconded by Trustee Croft. Any conversation? All those in favor? Motion carries.
Sorry, boss.
It's all good.
Okay, moving to item 9, committees and outside organizations. A, highlights of the March 6, 2019 DSAC meeting. Was that yours, Trustee Kemmler? Did you attend that meeting?
That was me.
Oh, Trustee Thorne. Would you like to?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the letter from the DSEC for April 9th.
Great, we received the highlights, okay. Moved by trustee Thorne, seconded by trustee DeGroot. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to item 9B, the BEDC motion, trustee Croft.
Thank you. We took a couple of runs at this one, and staff have updated the advisory committee terms of reference, and there was the latest matter was over section 7, which is now correct. So I would like to move that we accept these new terms of reference for the advisory committee.
Moved by trustee Croft, seconded by trustee Kendler. Any conversation? All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to upcoming meetings and events on page 65. Mr. Sandquist? Yes.
It was advertised that our public meeting for budget input would, within our budget timelines, would be at 5:30 to 6:30. So we believe that the advisory committee time should be 4:30 as usual, and the public meeting at 5:30 to 6:30 for April 16th.
Thank you. Trustee Croft?
Do we put the Health and Safety Committee on this list, or should it go on this list? No?
We haven't in the past. It's our decision.
Well, I'll tell you what happens is if we get a couple of lists floating around and stuff is on one document and not another, I may reference the wrong document. So could we have this as an all-inclusive list?
Okay, there are other items here that are not on here as well, I believe. I'm not sure, but we have a lot of postings. Trustee Hutchins?
Yeah, in the absence of use of Outlook calendar, it would certainly be nice to have a complete list. And I'd also ask for consideration that you kindly assigned us, we appreciate different months that were assigned. And so when it says DPAC meeting, could we have the trustee assigned to it that month? So it slaps us in the face at the beginning of the month, not that we miss it.
Fine, that sounds good to slap the trustees.
So moved, yeah.
All right, so we have a bit of an adding in for this piece. Okay. Just to be clear on the BCSTA AGM, the pre-conference is on April 25th, but also the BCSTA conference begins that evening at 7 p.m. How many people are going to the AGM? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, okay, well, good. We'll have strong representation. That's good. And the other thing that I'd like to just mention, but not to add, is this is beginning of April, but Education Week is April 22nd to 26th. So I'm not sure if anything is planned in our schools or district, Mr. Superintendent, or?
I thought you were going to be superintendent. At this point, we don't have district plans. We haven't polled schools to see what their plans are, but we can do that and get that information out to trustees.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on our schedule? Okay, moving to correspondence. Item 11A, letter from the District Health and Safety Committee. And I think you all have a copy of that on your blotters. So asking us to lower all school flags to half-mast on Friday, April 26th, in recognition of the National Day of Mourning on Sunday, April 28th. We did do that last year at buildings that we were able to do, so I'm not sure. I guess let's do a motion, and moved by trustee Hutchins, seconded by trustee Croft. Any discussion on that? Okay. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving through new business to question period. Any questions? Okay, moving to adjournment. Trustee Groot and is that trustee Boyd? Motion carries. Thank you very